This is Ravit Rose, author of Unwanted Nasty Divorces. I have the pleasure today to be sitting with Dominic Debate, and he's a mediator in Montreal, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about mediation. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I wanted to know a little bit more about you, your work, your experiences in mediation and co-parenting and in coaching.
Okay, I'm a social worker by profession, and I've been working with families and children and couples for the past, I guess, around 35 years or so. I'll leave it at 35.
Okay.
I trained at McGill as a social worker, and then I did a doctorate in University of Montreal, where the focus was on how parents and children adapted to separation and divorce, how they adjusted. This was several years back, I should say. And for the past 25 years, I've been training, working as a mediator, family mediator, training others in mediation, and supervising mediators, both lawyers and psychologists, social workers. Recently, I have been working with parenting coordination. It's a service for very high conflict couples who experience, again, constant, going back to court, and
over a course of several years?
Oh, over the course of a year, they might go 5-6 times, possibly. And so the court system, especially in the United States, in the past, I guess, 10 years, have, tried to channel these couples, these high conflict couples, to different services. Okay. And parenting coordination is one of the services that allows follow-up.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. So here in Quebec, we just finished a 2-year training program, or rather pilot project, where we worked with 10 families. There was 2 parenting coordinators. I was one of them. And a report is now before the Ministry of Justice. Hopefully it will end up being some things hopefully will be adopted, or some of the recommendations, I should say, whereby families will have more access to parenting coordination, which is a follow-up of a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
Okay. And
what entails in a parenting coordination program?
Well, the basic objectives are to have to help the 2 parents to follow a judgment or a parenting plan that's been established, which is often, as you probably know, is one of the challenges. Okay, for some people, is to follow what you agreed, or to implement what you agreed on. Okay? And if you don't have a good parenting plan, you don't follow a good parenting plan, well, then you have kind of chaotic interaction, and the children, of course, get impacted by that.
Of course.
The other objective is to help parents to co-parent in a more, functional, in a more, effective way, which is easier said than done for a lot. And that's why the long-term, duration of the parenting coordination, because it takes a while for things to sort of
change and adapt so new ways.
And then the third objective is to help parents not have to use, at least not excessively, professional intervention. Because 70% of all couples that go through separation and divorce manage on their own, with some little help here and there, maybe some legal help, some psychosocial help, but eventually they do their own thing, and then they're able to manage. The 30% that we're focusing on, tend to need from a moderate amount of help to a lot of help, a lot of intervention. At the mediation end of it, usually, and again, out of the 30%, maybe 15% can go to mediation, or are able to go to mediation and resolve their difficulties, whether the mediator be a lawyer, a social worker, a psychologist, or whatever, in mediation. The other 15% have a lot of difficulty. And here's where parenting coordination, co-parenting coaching, miracles perhaps, but therapeutic interventions, psychosocial expertise become really important, where you have a lot of conflict and unresolved conflict, and people who just maybe don't have a great interest in resolving, their issues.
Because they may have ulterior motives.
They might have ulterior motives. There might be mental health issues. There's a lot of reasons why people get into a very combative state and remain there, or they just keep going or escalate very easily.
Is this why the Quebec government offers mediation for free for most families if they fall into a certain category?
Well, I mean, we can say a lot about the government, but in this area, and I've traveled elsewhere in Europe and in North America and so on, we have the most generous plan with regards to helping couples who are going through separation and divorce find some kind of an alternative to litigation, mediation being the primary way of doing it. And so their motives for the government is because, one thing, they save money. I mean, the bottom line.
How much money?
Oh, millions. Because, if you have, I don't know, thousands of people go through mediation, okay, the cost of that mediation is very minimal compared to having to hire judges and, every time somebody goes to court, a day session in a court, okay, a trial for a day, costs between $10,000 and $15,000 to the system. Okay, so we're talking about hiring, having the judge, paying the clerk, paying the bailiff that's in there, and so on. So the system is not really interested, believe it or not. They're not interested in having this constant flow of litigants coming in and using up the services at the courthouse. There are a lot more serious situations I have to deal with at the criminal level and so on than at the family court level. Okay, so it does interest the government in trying to get these people moved out. Okay.
Is this why they changed their procedure code as of January 1st, 2016? I mean, was the intention to lower their costs, encourage more peaceful approaches?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
They did. I mean, amongst other reasons, but and I guess you can go into various other, underlying, motivations that they had or motivation that they had. But certainly to reduce conflict, to have more peaceful resolution. Everywhere in the world right now, especially in the civil area, you're moving towards mediation. So civil mediation is very, very popular. In fact, obligatory in some places around the world. Mm-hmm. And here we're really making a push right now to settle disputes that would end up in court and take up all kinds of time and and it's expensive for everybody. And so finding a way to resolve it. In family law, surprisingly, we're going a little bit slower. So I'm not exactly certain why, and I won't even speculate as to why. But there is an effort. I mean, we do have 5 free hours of mediation that are offered, families. I mean, that's very generous relative to what's going on elsewhere. Sure. We have a 2.5-hour session at the courthouse as information for parents who are contemplating separation or divorce or going to court before a judge. And so there's that, and that's free.
And that's to understand what the process would be if they were to go through litigation?
Well, yeah, and it's to sell mediation, essentially. Well, first of all, it's to inform them of what their children are experiencing and what they can expect their children to experience if it
turns into a high conflict situation.
In a high conflict situation, or if there's an escalation in their conflict and so on. And then, the alternative, to litigation being mediation, primarily mediation, And so that's what's really sold. And this is at the courthouse. I mean, the government funds this all over Quebec.
Okay. And in your experience, what are the main advantages in terms of co-parenting in mediation versus in litigation? Can you co-parent once you've gone through litigation, which means going to divorce courts?
Well, listen, parents have no choice after they litigate, even a bitter divorce, a contested divorce. They still have to take care of their children. How that takes place and how they do that, certainly they're wounded. Once you go through a litigation process, which sometimes gets vicious, as you probably know. you're not more apt to be effective as a co-parent. You know, you're not apt to be more collaborative with your co-parent. You don't have good feelings about, you know, co-parenting and so on. And
You actually lose your desire at some point, which is what I
sure,
mentioned in the book, is that when there's so much anger and animosity and vengefulness and all this ugliness that comes in, you don't feel the need to or the desire to want to make anything better.
well, what happens is that cognitively and you know psychologically, maybe I should put, you know, you become insensitive to that.
Sure.
Your defensive mechanism has been aroused to such an extent that it's hard to break down those barriers now and say, okay, let me look at my co-parent in a way that makes sense because we have children to raise. Okay,
Sure.
and even, you know, even people who are well-intentioned, good people, smart people, and so on, you go through enough of a you know, through a bitter divorce, you don't come out of it unscathed, for sure.
Sure.
You know, and that's the unfortunate part. And
So now a lot of people's major questions are as follows. Mediation is a voluntary process, which means that anyone can go to mediation or decide not to go. There are a couple of main issues here, and I wanted your opinion to help settle some people's contemplation of mediation. Number one is, let's say Jane and John, for example, go to mediation. One of them decides not to go back.
mhm.
And so the other party is forced to go to divorce court because of the fact that they haven't settled anything yet. The second part is that they go through the mediation process and they have a verbal agreement, but it's not written. So nothing is set in stone, and therefore the party who does not want to follow through decides that he or she is not going to do anything that they had agreed on. So, in your experiences, what can people do in this situation?
Well, it's a good question, tough question too, because look, in any kind of mediation, the civil, the you know, between neighbors, parent-child, between two parents going through a separation divorce, it's a voluntary process. It has to be a voluntary process by the very nature of trying to mediate, get people to agree on something. So yes, one of the problems that arises is one party decides this is not for me. I don't like it. I'm not getting a fair shake, or for whatever reason decides to terminate. Any party can terminate mediation, whether it be the parties, the mediator, for whatever reason. Okay. So what happens after that? Well, in a situation where there are children involved and so on, I think as much as possible, looking at alternatives to going before a judge. Okay, that can mean speaking to your lawyer if you have a lawyer. Okay,
Is it necessary to have a lawyer before you walk into a mediation?
no, not at all, not at all. But if you do have a lawyer, for example, and a lot of these instances where it's a touch and go type thing with the mediation, usually there's lawyers involved. Now it's incumbent on those lawyers, okay, to try to find a way of settling the dispute other than going before, yeah, out of court. Yeah. So talking to your lawyer and say, look, you know, try to see how we can settle this outside of this. There's also the possibility of having mental health professionals come in, experts who will do evaluations, or depending on what the reason for the person not wanting to continue. I mean, let's say it's a valid reason because there's a, you know, something is contested and they're not. Well, you can have experts come in to mediate, or to rather to mediate, to evaluate.
Sure.
You know, and a good mediator will always keep the door open. So saying, okay, it's not working right now. Let's take a time out. Let's see what else we can do and come back to the mediation. I mean, I never close my files ever unless it's terminated and things are done. And even then, because people might come back for revisions and so on.
Okay.
So, you know, it's goodwill, as much, you know, of the professionals involved. It's you know, I mean, look, legally, you can only force people to do so much. I mean, you know, they don't want to be in a mediation. Well, you can't force them. They want absolutely to go in front of a judge. I'll tell you, United States in particular, the Second Amendment and so on, you absolutely have the right to be heard by a judge. In fact, there's all kinds of complications that, or problems they're having with things like mediation, parenting coordination, and so on, where decisions are made outside of the court system. Okay, and it's raising all kinds of constitutional problems because people do ultimately have a right to go before a judge. That's part of every constitution I know of or law.
Okay, but in reality, though, if somebody does not want to follow suit with whatever the agreement was in mediation and decides to go to litigation, everything they've done in mediation is pretty
it's
much
unfortunate.
lost,
Well,
and they're kind of starting the process again. So, do you think that that's the smartest move to make, to
absolutely.
go through court and then hire a litigation attorney and the costs involved
Yeah.
and the time delays also?
I think it's certainly not a wise thing, a wise course of action. Absolutely not, because you're going to start the whole process over again in front of a judge. Litigation, aside from being expensive, time-consuming, it just creates havoc in any kind of relationship, family relationship or family
It
relationship.
turns into battles and wars.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a battle. I mean, you have a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
In litigation, you have a winner and a loser usually. In mediation, we try to have a winning situation for everybody involved. Okay, so it is a problem. What to do about it is it's a little perplexing because I think that the professionals involved right now, anyways, especially the lawyers, because it comes back to them if any kind of other process doesn't work. I think, and it puts a lot of pressure on them, to try to find other ways. Now you have, for a collaborative lawyer, okay, it's less of a problem because that's what they do. They try to establish collaboration between the clients involved and try to come up with a settlement. Okay, so the I think that what needs to be done more is our legal system making it harder for people to go to court.
Exactly.
Make
And
it
which
harder.
you know that you've read in my book that I've mentioned
Yeah, I
quite a
think
few times.
but that's yeah. I mean, I think it's an important piece. How that's done, given the complexities of what we have to deal with within the structures of the legal structures that we have, or the yeah, I'm not that certain, but certainly there's few professionals who work as mediators or as parenting coordinators and so on who would not want to see a system which would, if not oblige people to do something that might be unconstitutional or against their constitutional interests and so on, at least really push them in a direction of settlement and so on, much like they do with civil cases now, which is interesting. So why not do as much in family law situations? Interesting.
So there are
it's a debate to be had.
Sure. So there are advancements. Things are moving. Things are changing. Hopefully, with the new code that passed in January of 2016, things will get better. Hopefully, your project that you were working on will start to take shape. But the one biggest concern is that there really is zero accountability. That, even if you sign an agreement in mediation, and rather if you have an agreement that was signed with outside of mediation, if somebody decides not to do something or not to follow it, there's really not much you can do, right? So, what's your take on that in mediation, especially, or in even if you litigate? You can have an agreement of some sort, or a judge renders a decision, and the other party decides not to do anything. Do you think that any of these changes will include accountability?
Well, I think that accountability is a big word here because, and again, what does it mean, especially in legal terms and so on, or in terms of moral obligations, so on. I mean, some people think they're very accountable to themselves, to the kids, and everybody else, and to their God practically by litigating. Some people don't. I think, look, on the positive end. Luckily, they don't. These people don't represent a huge, small. They represent a small minority. Okay. On the other side of it, on the flip side of this, they use up far too many resources. Okay. The few people, the 5-10% or whatever, maybe 15% at the most, use up 90% of all the resources that we have in the court system, at least with family law and so on. Okay. It's a travesty, and it's really that has to change.
It has to.
Getting people to be more accountable and say, hey, you have an obligation as a parent and so on. We have moved in that direction to some degree. I mean, there are parental obligations that now, especially with providing financial support, that are measures that have been put into place that make it a lot harder for parents to not assume their, to rescind their responsibilities and move, and just do whatever they want than 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Where we're moving, we're moving very slowly in this direction. I don't know, mandatory mediation, there's all kinds of things that maybe could be considered. I hope that the discussion continues.
Absolutely.
People like yourself and in the community, we need a lot of pressure. We need people to sort of hold maybe the government, legal professionals, or the legal system, I should say, perhaps, accountable.
Absolutely.
Maybe more accountable.
Absolutely.
And that will push the ante a little bit. Will force people to continue the discussion. And like we've made some reforms, made a small gain here with the changes in the procedures, judicial procedures. Maybe we'll move a little quicker into getting people really outside of the litigation system and having to settle and take responsibilities for being parents, because when they had kids, that's what they assume,
Yes.
parental responsibilities, and they need to understand. Again, most do, by the way. Those who don't need to be helped and
to keep their personal vendetta out of this situation, to keep this as realistic as possible, to think of both parties moving on with their lives, the children being offered a normal childhood under the circumstances, and so where everybody could just co-parent, coexist, communicate, live in an environment where there isn't so much hatred, animosity, and all these nasty divorces.
What can I tell you? Yes.
That'd be the
absolutely.
idealistic situation.
Yeah, and
right?
people have to remember, that they're married for a period of time, or they're a couple one day, but they are co-parents. And I say co-parents. Okay, it doesn't mean equal time. Co-parents mean people involved with their children. Parents are not forever.
Forever. Exactly.
Okay, that's
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for all your valuable information. I know that you've published a little bit of work and articles and so on and so forth, so we're going to be sharing that on the Ravit Rose website. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Mr.
Welcome.
Dabadi.
You're welcome.